Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you. So, from yesterday's video, we were playing Castra Zodiac. I was still in a little bit of a control mood, but I also wanted to come back to a deck that I hadn't covered in a couple of seasons. I wanted to make sure that we were, upkeeping decks that maybe didn't get as much attention as I would always like. And I found an answer to both in the form of Sky Striker. Sky Striker is one of my favorite control decks to play, and some of you might be a little confused when I say control deck, because you might be thinking, well, control deck, isn't that a deck like Trap Tricks or Labyrinth or a back row deck like that? Sky Striker can actually be a bit of a back row deck sometimes, but you don't actually need to be playing 20 trap cards in order to be playing a control deck. Really, in my opinion, what defines a control deck is a deck that wants the game to go on longer, right? Because it wins by gaining incremental advantage as opposed to OTKing all at once. Although this deck does actually have the ability to OTK as well, thanks to the Sky Striker Mobilized Linkage. Although I will say, especially in the current meta, it's kind of difficult to find opportunities to do the OTK. I didn't get a chance, I felt even really close to have a chance to do so in the games that I played. But in past videos, I have covered this OTK line before. So if you're interested, I have plenty of other Sky Striker videos in which we talk about this when Leakage. I think the first one Leakage came out, I demonstrate that combo line multiple times in that video. But you know what? I'll even go ahead and link it in the description below. And if I forget to, feel free to yell at me in the comments, and I'll go ahead and do so. So that way, if you want to see the OTK in action, if you're not familiar with Sky Strikers, you can go ahead and do so. But for the most part, no, you are definitely going to be winning in a more grind game situation as opposed to doing the OTK line. Like I said, especially in the current meta where the opportunity to OTK really only happens when your opponent has like no disruption and also a relatively empty board, right? And we do play stuff like Raigeki and Feather Duster, right? As well as the Thrust to search them, but it's not something that I would like go out of my way to do, right? Especially because this is a going second deck, you do also want to be focusing on stopping your opponent from doing stuff. And that is one very nice thing about playing this kind of Sky Striker deck, or really just Sky Striker in general, because I think this is about like the optimal way to play Sky Striker. You can play a more going first built variant, but I definitely prefer the going second one. And it might seem like this doesn't look like a going second deck to you. It might seem like a very average looking Master Duel deck, but I do have some cards in here specifically in mind for going second. For example, Raigeki and Evenly Matched. I would not be playing these cards if I was planning on going first, because these cards are really only good going second. To a lesser extent, I mean, in this deck in particular, that's also very true of Thrust, right? So Thrust, I've always said this about this card, that if you're going to be playing this in a deck that wants to go first, you need to have a powerful trap card to set, ideally one that's better than Imperm, or just something that's kind of shoehorned in, like Evenly or the Daruma Cannon, in a deck that doesn't typically play it. I don't think it's usually optimal to play that specifically to include Thrust. However, again, for this deck, we are wanting to go second, and we have a very, very, very powerful normal spell card that we do want to search. So that's why Thrust, I think, definitely makes a lot of sense in Sky Striker. And I think the aforementioned point I had about, this card isn't as good as it looks going first is why this card really kind of fell off pretty hard, right? Like, I remember, and I was a bit unsure myself, I wasn't sure if this was going to be the case or not, but I remember when Thrust first came out, this card was very, very much hyped up to be, like, the best card in Master Duel, an instant staple in every deck, but again, I think going first, it's a lot harder to use this card than you might think, right? Because Thrust set Imperm is pretty mid. It's really not worth including Thrust in your deck to do that. And again, I don't think it's worth playing something like Evenly or the Daruma Cannon, right? If you're not playing a deck that already wants to be playing that card just to specifically play Thrust. And I think the same is true of like Raigeki as well, right? Like this is just a going second card, right? Because if you were going first and you open this, this would do nothing. This would do nothing at all for you. And if you're playing a kind of more traditional modern Yu-Gi-Oh deck that wants to combo on turn one, you kind of, in the best of one format in particular anyway, like Master Duel, Ranked Ladder, you can't really necessarily afford to be like opening a card like Raigeki when you go first, right? So, I don't know. That is to say, I think a deck that's not specifically going second that plays something like Raigeki or Evenly can't do well. I just don't personally necessarily think that it's optimal. But again, this is a dedicated going second list. So we are playing Raigeki and Evenly. Only the one Evenly. You might think, okay, well, you are a going second deck, so why not max out on Evenly? The reason for that is that we actually do need our battle phase in order to make plays. That's actually why Sky Striker is a going second deck. More than the amount of hand traps we play, more than the potential to OTK, more than the going second tools, the main reason to play this deck going second is because you need Hayate to battle, to just set up a card in your graveyard, to get back with Kagari. Like, just to make plays in general, you need to be able to battle the majority of the time. So that's why this is a going second deck, right? We didn't go out of our way to make a going second build. It's just naturally, in my opinion, again, the best way to play the deck, right? So, in that regard, but again, like I said before, we need the battle damage in order to set up our plays, which is why we only want the one Evenly. I do still have a single copy to just get rid of, like, you know, kind of more sticky boards or boards with a lot of stuff that might be tricky to outright. It's also just, you know, you only need the one of if you're going to search it with Thrust, you know. That's why I didn't bother crafting like a second Raigeki. That's why we're only playing one talent. Of course, Feather Duster is already limited, but you get the picture, right? So, yeah, I mean, as far as the rest of the build here, we're pretty much just playing, you know, a bunch of hand traps, which, honestly, even if we weren't a going second deck, I still just like the idea of playing. I've been on this a lot lately, of your hand trap to engine ratio, and in best of one, I think this is a lesson that Super Heavy Samurai taught me. In best of one for Master Duel especially, if you can get your deck as close to like 50% engine, 50% disruption as well, you're so likely to get opening hands that have like multiple pieces of engine and multiple pieces of disruption, and that's exactly where you want to be, again, especially in a best of one format where the coin flip is going to decide. You know, you have the one game, right? The one game decides the whole match, so you need to be prepared to play going first or second, or you can be playing a deck like this that just always plans on going second. So, yeah, like I said, in that regard, we get to play a pretty nice hand trap / going second card. I count cards like Raigeki and Talent, and even to an extent Thrust, in that, like, hand trap / disruption / good going second, non-engine kind of half of the deck, right? But anyway, there's a lot of the usual suspects here. Of course, our Master Duel attacks of Maxi and Ash Blossom. We've got the Veilers and the Imperms for the Snake Eyes. Ghost Spell also for Snake Eye. Also just a good card in general. Not just in this meta, but there's a lot of interactions that Ghost Spell can mess with that you wouldn't necessarily expect. There's extremely few matchups where this card is just dead and doesn't do anything at all, even though it might not necessarily seem like it. But yeah, we got like the one of Nibiru. I did kind of consider playing a second Nibiru over the Evenly, but I think the tiebreaker for me was that Evenly was searchable by Thrust, and I thought that might come up. Well, it wasn't just that, it was also like getting rid of back rows, right? Like, yeah, we have Feather Duster, but I wanted like one other way to potentially get rid of back rows, because you know, in a deck especially that wants to play a longer game, you do need to be thinking about more of a variety of scenarios. Like, I don't feel the need to play Feather Duster in most decks just to deal with back rows, but that's because most combo decks, you know, I'm either going to win the coin flip, do my combo, and hopefully that's enough to carry me to the win, or I'm going to go second and either hopefully disrupt my opponent enough that they don't get to play out their turn, and then I can play out my combo, or I can just push through their combo, right? So in that regard, I'm kind of fine not playing a card like Feather Duster in more traditional modern Yu-Gi-Oh decks. Also because it's a one-of, and it's like, you know, because I get that comment a lot, like, oh, why don't you play Feather Duster in case you run into Stun? It's like, okay, so if I include Feather Duster, that's for exactly the following situation. If I play a back row deck, if I happen to even queue against it, which is already a vast minority of the time, right? If I happen to queue a back row deck, if they happen to go first to be able to set up their back row, if I happen to draw Feather Duster, if they happen to not have a Solemn, and then if I happen to have plays beyond that, then yes, it will have been worth it to have played the Feather Duster. But that's so unlikely. Even just, again, starting off playing its back row decks, already very unlikely to happen just by pure statistical chance. It will over a long enough period of time, but playing against the back row deck and going second and drawing the Feather Duster, it's like, it's a lot to ask, so... but in a deck like this one that has longer games, you're more likely to draw the Feather Duster over time, or we also have the Thrust to search it, so... I think this is actually another reason why I wanted to play Sky Strikers. I was like, I have not played Triple Tactics Thrust in so long. Like, let's actually play a deck that uses this card. But anyway, I think that's everything I wanted to say about the list, so I'm going to break it down card by card, and then we'll look at some games. We are on 3 Effect Veiler, 3 Maxi, 3 Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, 2 Ghost Spell and Haunted Mansion, 3 Sky Striker Ace Ray, 1 Sky Striker Ace Rose, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 1 Raigeki, 1 Harpy's Feather Duster, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, 1 Pot of Desires, 2 Sky Striker Mobilize Engage, 1 Sky Striker Maneuver Afterburners, 1 Triple Tactics Talent, 3 Triple Tactics Thrust, 1 Sky Striker Mecha Modules Multi-Roll, 1 Sky Striker Mecha Hornet Drones, 3 Sky Striker Mecha Widow Anchor, 1 Sky Striker Mecha Shark Cannon, we have 3 Sky Striker Mobilize Linkage, 1 Evenly Match, and then 3 Infinite Permanents. There is our main deck. For the extra deck, we're on 3 Sky Striker Ace Kagari, 3 Sky Striker Ace Shizuku, 2 Sky Striker Ace Hayate, 1 Sky Striker Ace Kaina, 1 Hita the Fire Charmer Ablaze, 1 Sky Striker Ace Zeke, 1 Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy, 1 Sky Striker Ace Azalea, 1 Celine Queen of the Master Magicians, and then finally 1 Access Code Talker. That's going to do it for our list. Let's see some duels. Okay, so my first opponent here is going to be playing Vance. I haven't run into this deck in quite some time, but we are going to see how we open here. Again, we're always going to be going seconds. These are always going second games, and we love to see the Maxi as well as the Effect Veiler. Thrust is definitely not bad here as well. Opponent's going to lead with Scion, the Valence Archer. When they go to special, I'm going to Maxi, and you'll note that I did wait to Maxi there. I see a lot of people shotgunning Maxis in this meta, presumably to catch the draw off of the Diabell Star, and I don't think it's worth it to shotgun Maxi right now. It's such an important tool for, like, not only in a situation like this, like, I want to make sure that I'm getting the draw, and I think a lot of people are shotgunning Maxi hands where they do need to draw a card. But not only that, like, if you wait a little bit on the Maxi, you can get your opponent more committed, like, as far as, like, the resources they've invested onto the board, which gives them fewer opportunities to follow up, or to come back on, like, a follow-up turn, right? Because they'll have less resources to do so. So, yeah, nowadays, I'm not Maxiing during the draw phase. Like, even if I see a Wanted during the draw phase, if I have a really good hand, then I might chain it, after, or I might Maxi after they've added the Diabell, but... you know, if they get the Diabell summoned, a lot of time for me, that's fine. So here's what they're going to do under Maxi. The Valence opponent here decided to go Baguska Fossil Dyna. Fossil Dyna might seem a little bit weird to some people who are used to seeing it in like a Pendulum-style combo deck, but the Valence deck, the combo infamously ends on not only the Fossil Dyna, but also Secret Village with a Spellcaster, so no special summons, no spell cards. Really lucky here we actually stopped the combo line when we did, because no spell cards would be very devastating for a deck like this. But this board state we can actually handle. I'm going to lead with the Desires, and that is going to get me another Thrust and a Bell. I'm going to have to set 3 cards just to make sure I'm not discarding anything and then pass it over to my opponent. Here I'm like, if they want to turn their Baguska to attack mode, they're more than welcome to, but they ultimately opt not to, which kind of makes sense. Alright, there's the Ray. That's all I needed was a monster that could battle over Fossil Dyna. Now I can Widow Anchor their Tapir, right? And then I can normal summon Ray. My plan is to battle over the Fossil Dyna. Well, here was actually my plan, right? Before the Maxi went down. My plan was to, okay, I'm going to negate the Tapir with the Widow Anchor, right? Normal summon Ray. Battle phase, Ray battles into Fossil Dyna. Then, during the battle phase, as a quick effect, I can link off Ray into the Hayate. Hayate can send Sky Striker... oh, I banished the Afterburners. Ooh, I did miss that. So that is a little bit awkward. That means I'm not actually able to destroy Baguska like I thought, but I have plenty of other routes here. Here, my opponent didn't like to use a Maxi, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Thrust, and then I just conceded. Looking at what was left in my deck, I did still have the Raigeki, so that seems like a pretty easy choice. I could grab Raigeki, add that to my hand, activate it, destroy the Baguska and the Fossil Dyna. And then I think we would have been good to go because I believe Baguska only protects from card effects while it's in attack position. This attack position card cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Yep, so that would have indeed done it there. So, you know, even if you're in situations where your opponent's got you locked down, it's very easy for this deck to still come back. In fact, we're going to have another game here against Stun. You know what, let's just make that our next duel that we watch. We'll see this game and how it beats Stun. So let's look at that here. Okay, as I mentioned at the end of the last one, this is going to be a game we're playing against Stun. One really cool thing about Sky Striker is that, and I guess control decks in general, is that they tend to have a pretty good matchup against Stun. Because they're not relying on a ton of summons or a ton of different monsters on the board to win, and they can often answer Stun's cards as well. So, opponents can lead with an Nadir Servant, and this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that Ghost Spell is just such a good card. In even the most random of matchups, like, you would not think of Ghost Spell as being useful against Stun, but almost every Stun deck is on the Nadir Servant, Ecclesia, and Dogmatica Punishment package. So the ability to get rid of or to negate outright the Nadir Servant is really, really good. So no setting up the Ecclesia or the Punishment or getting a draw off the Garura they send. They have to set one card and pass it over to me. That one card is going to be Summon Limit, but I can actually still do my Link plays under it. I'm going to activate Engage and then chain the Linkage. Now, normally, if my opponent hadn't flipped up a Summon Limit, I think what I would do here is probably just engage for... Well, I don't know, this line might actually have been correct anyway. See, it's really good to get Ray into rotation, right? And I think that is maybe what I would have done here, but if I normal summon Ray and then go into Hayate, I can't though I cannot then go into Kagari, right? So whatever shall I do? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to activate Engage, like I said, and then chain the Linkage, because Linkage has to send a face-up card on my field to the graveyard. So we can use that to summon out the Kagari. Engage will still resolve. I'm going to add the multi-roll here. Now I can activate Kagari, wheel the Engage back to my hand. Is what I would have done if my opponent hadn't used an effect veiler here. That is a little bit unfortunate, but as you can see, I do also have the Thrust in my hand, so I'm not the most sad in the world here, right? I'm going to use my Thrust. I'm going to set Feather Duster. I can't activate it this turn, but this does present a degree of inevitability for my opponent here. And that was only one summon, by the way, the Kagari, because we summoned it off Linkage. So now I can pivot into Shizuku. And end phase, I'm just going to go ahead and grab, like a Widow Anchor. I grabbed Widow Anchor in case my opponent had like a Barrier Statue or a Fossil Line I need to negate. They set a card, realize I'm just going to Feather Duster their back rows anyway, and then ultimately concede. I think that might have been a little bit of an early concede. Well, I don't know, actually, because here's the thing. Would I have been able to set up in OTK? I did have... Actually, I don't know, because I did have the Linkage in the yard, but I would have had to have used Kagari to add it back. And I know that part of the OTK involves using Kagari to add back Linkage in the middle of your battle phase to do enough damage. I don't think I could have actually OTK'd them on the crackback. But I mean, to be fair, you know, this, much like a lot of other control decks, Sky Striker wins through that sense of inevitability, right? You don't necessarily have to reduce your opponent's life points to 0. A lot of the times with control decks, your opponent surrendering is kind of the win condition, right? Because they end up in a situation where your victory, even if it's not coming this turn, is inevitable because you have so many resources and they have so few, right? And that's really what the essence of playing control is. Again, it's not playing 20 trap cards in your deck. It's not flipping floodgates. What control decks are all about is that grind game, that inevitable victory, death by 1,000 cuts, you could say, so on and so forth. But yeah, we still have a couple more duels to see from Sky Striker. Let's see the next one. All right, so this opponent is on Danger Dark World. Another kind of crazy combo deck that I haven't run into in quite some time, in a similar vein of Valance like we saw earlier. So, let's see how we open here. This is a very good going second hand, although it doesn't have any gas in it. So this is exactly the kind of hand where I think it's really important to max C and make sure you're drawing cards in order to make sure you have plays, except, oops, my opponent's on Danger Dark World, which is a deck that's really infamous for being able to deck people out who just throw out a max C at the beginning of their combo line. So my plan here is to wait a little bit. And when I say a little bit, I actually mean quite a while. My plan is to let them summon God, I don't know. I don't even know what the best time to throw out Maxi is. I feel like more than halfway into that combo line, but like that's such an arbitrary thing when it comes to a deck like this. Although, to be fair, I don't even know for sure if they're going to be able to fully combo out. With everything they're doing so far, it doesn't seem like they have access to that, like, summoning loop that the deck wants to be in, right? In any case, I haven't even had an opportunity to Veil or Imprim yet before Card Destruction comes down, right? So, Card Destruction, and I'm not even going to chain the Maxi to that, because especially with Card Destruction, like, not only are they discarding a bunch of stuff, but they're getting new cards in their hand, and I don't want to be in a situation where I throw out a Maxi here because I feel like I have to, and then it ultimately costs me the game. And I know that sounds really weird, but this, like, if you've never played this matchup, you gotta understand, like, how many summons this deck can do. It's not hard at all for them to deck you out with your own Maxi. So, again, not activating Maxi at all there, I'm sure looked really bizarre to a lot of players. You gotta believe me when I say it was correct. I'm sure there are people in the comments who could verify, because I've gotten decked out. I've gotten decked out activating Maxi against this deck before, and I'm sure there are other people in the comments who could verify that as well. But a new hand from Card Destruction is going to have Ash Blossom and Ghost Spell. I'm absolutely going to Ghost Spell the Dark World Ascension. This will not only prevent them from fusing into Fusion Grapha, which is an Omni Negate, but the effect of Ascension also discards in and of itself, so I don't want them to have more gas. They're going to link off into a Muckraker, normal summon the Beige, and then summon back the Grapha, and that's actually it for their turn. So I'm like, whew, alright, we're good. We made it. This new hand they gave me, by the way, is fantastic. It's much better than the one I had before. I'm going to activate Multi-Roll and then engage for Ray, normal summon Ray, move to battle phase. I get to battle over Muckraker, then link off Ray with her effect in the battle phase to Hayate. Hayate attacks directly and then bins a Leakage, which, by the way, is now the third spell card in our graveyard, which means I can now Widow Anchor, steal and negate, well, negate and steal, rather, my opponent's Grapha and smack them with it as well. I can use the multi-roll to send off the Grapha. I could have also linked into Zeke and then linked into Kagari, but I might as well save Zeke. I might end up needing it later in the duel. It's like if I can make use of multi-roll's effect now, I might as well do it. So Kagari's going to wheel back Engage. Again, we now have 3 spells in our graveyard, so this will search and a draw. The Feather Duster here is actually kind of nice. I get to get rid of the Gates of the Dark World, so they can't use it on their next turn. I definitely want to search the Shark Cannon for some additional disruption as well. Now going to link into Shizuku, set these 2 cards, and then during the end phase, this is what I like to call the Shizuku Shuffle. So during the end phase, you have the option to activate either Multi-Roll or Shizuku's effect first. In most situations where you have 1 Engage in your graveyard and 1 in your deck, you want to activate the Multi-Roll first, set the Engage from your graveyard, and of course anything else you want to, right? Then use Shizuku's effect, because Shizuku adds a Sky Striker spell from your deck to your hand with different names from the ones in your graveyard. So now that Multi-Roll has pulled Engage out of the graveyard, it's no longer there. Now I can add one from deck to hand, as well as having the one that I set earlier. So, and then again, did I win by reducing my opponent's life points to 0? No, I won through sheer inevitability, and that is, again, the essence of a control deck. Especially this kind of a resource loop, right? With the multi-rolls and the Shizuku Shuffle and the engages, right? Especially with Kagari as well. And it was really nice to be able to steal my opponent's Grapha there with the Widow Anchor and get not only a lot of extra damage in, but also be able to remove it. Because I could have, like, you know, searched in Afterburners or whatever and destroyed it during the main phase too. But that's the thing about Sky Striker is, like, the cards, like, you read all of the cards and you might think to yourself, like, how does a deck like this win? Like, it seems like it doesn't do a lot, but you just have to gain, again, that slow incremental advantage through all these little interactions is what's going to ultimately do it. We have one more game to check out before we end off here, and let's just head right into it. Okay, the final opponent here is going to be on Snake Eye. Good old Snake Eye. We definitely expect to see this quite a bit in the current meta. Duh, that's like the statement, that's like the duh statement of the year, right? So, yeah. We're going second, of course, because we always are. We're going to lead with the Divine Temple for a Poplar, which I thought was a little interesting. pitch the Imperm, summon the Diabell F for the Original Sin. Original Sin F is going to activate here, setting the Poplar. We of course have an Imperm in our hand, which I'm just going to fire off when Snake Eye Ash tries to activate its effect. I guess the Poplar made sense of the Divine Tempo if they wanted to reset it. It's definitely not the worst decision in the world. Alright, Imperm the Snake Eye Ash. Poplar is in the spell trap zone. Probably going to be the end of their turn. Oh, that's right. They can link, of course, because of the Diabell as well. And here they actually make the IP, which might seem a little weird, but if you think about it, it does actually kind of make sense, right? Because if I summon, they get to pull out Poplar and then go into a Link 3. So I'm going to lead with the Engage. Opponent's going to chain Maxi, which I don't think is a good time to chain Maxi at all. It would have been very easy for me to have talents and just like totally fuck them up here, but they lucked out, and I didn't. So I'm going to normal summon Ray. They're going to bring out the Poplar, and then immediately activate the IP effects going into Sprite Elf. I thought it was going to be Nightmare Unicorn, which actually kind of would have been nice, because I could have dodged it with Ray. With Elf, they're able to target the IP. Here I use Ghost Spell. Looking back, I think this might not have been the best opportunity to Ghost Spell, because the IP can't use its effect again anyway. I could have just gotten rid of it with the Afterburners, either way, I could have, like, Afterburners the Elf and then battled over the IP. It's like, did I really need to save my Afterburners? I think Ghost Spell might have been more valuable because of its ability. Like, I could have actually used Ghost Spell here against the Snake Eye, the Original Sin. I mean, here I have Valor to negate the Snake Eye Ash. That's why I wasn't worried about using my Ghost Spell in the moment. So I actually didn't need to use it there either. But again, I'm going to kind of keep track of this Ghost Spell versus the Afterburner and try to figure out which one I think is going to end up being more valuable in the long run. Alright, so Poplar is placing the Sprite Elf, which might look a little weird again, but again, actually it makes sense because if I summon on my turn, they can pull out the Elf, and then I'll have a monster on the field, so Elf can actually then pull out the IP. As I go to battle, I'm going to definitely use Ray to go into Kagari and get back my Engage here. They do get to summon out that Elf, like I mentioned, but, you know, it is what it is. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, Kagari, Ray gets to come back by its own effect. I guess they weren't paying attention here. They thought I was going to have a monster because they just battled their Elf into my Ray. I do get to Evenly. This Evenly is pretty big here, but the Elf is also actually pretty big because it gets to bring back the Maxi. And then now they're going to go into Promethean Princess, which is going to set them up for a whole other set of plays here. I said this before in our last stream, but goddamn, Promethean Princess is just such an insanely broken card. It might actually need to be what gets hit in this deck. Like, you know, because a lot of people were speculating, what are they going to hit in the Snake Eye deck? It's got so many URs. While, yes, it does seem like Konami tries to avoid URs sometimes, they don't always. You know, you can look back to the Adventure Engine, right? They limited Water Enchantress pretty shortly after it came out. Granted, it did come in semi, but I'm just kind of thinking, like, yeah, here my opponent just has way too much. I'm not able to come back. But I'm just kind of thinking, like, the Promethean Princess came out so long ago, even if it is a UR. Plus, if you just think about the deck from a power standpoint, like, yeah, maybe they could stand to have Ash, you know, hit as well. That's definitely the deck starter. But, like, it's Promethean Princess that lets them do, like, so many different disgusting things, right? Promethean Princess is what brings back the Flamberge and lets it set up the IP. It's also more disruption on the opponent's turn. It makes the Amble, like, it just, I don't know. I was chatting with someone relatively recently about this, and they brought up that they thought Princess Band was the hit. And I'm like, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. So we'll see what ends up happening, though. Yeah, that'll do it for these games, though. Thank you very much, everyone who watched. Hope you enjoyed them. Let's move now to our outro. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. That means a lot to me. It's also a great way to support the channel, so thank you very much in that way as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways, like the very special patrons that I am thanking here, you can do so by checking out some of the links in the description. One of those goes to the Patreon, where you can join these fine folk and support the channel that way. I do post daily content over on Patreon, so you do get something for supporting supporting there. And if you're interested, I also have a coaching tier option as well. Details, again, will be on Patreon in the link below. Also in the description, linked below, is my Twitch page where I stream a few times a week. You can go ahead and check that out, follow or subscribe over there if you ever want to catch me live. You'll also find my second YouTube channel if you feel like subscribing over there to watch some of the Twitch VODs as well as some additional non-Yu-Gi-Oh related content that I make over there. Again, any of those links you want to check out is all a great way of supporting. But again, even if you don't do that, just watching was also a fantastic way to support. And once again, I have to thank you so very much. But in any case, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out, and I'm hoping you have a fantastic day.